All right, are we in a wimpy man national crisis? I'm going to put an image on the screen here, and what you'll be able to tell is that testosterone levels have been dropping across the board, regardless of age, for men since the 80s, or probably even further back if you look at the data. So we're going to talk about this. Why is it the case? Why does this matter? What's causing this? And what can we do about this? So the cold hard data is male testosterone has been dropping about 1% a year regardless of age. So a 20-year-old versus a 60-year-old, across the board we've seen a decrease in T levels. Okay, so younger men today have lower testosterone than older men of previous generations. So younger guys, let's say under 30, 18 to 30, have been seeing a decrease in testosterone compared to older men, right, who naturally have less testosterone and are less healthy and active. So what's going on? Well, I think one of the causes, and we'll get into it a little bit deeper, but it's basically a soy boy epidemic. So, this is kind of a meme on the internet, soy boy, a guy who drinks a lot of soy milk and is feminine and doesn't lift weights because it hurts and just wants to sit at home and jerk his meat and, scroll the internet. Okay, so this is not just about aging, it's a decline across the board. And what you typically see is when things are so good, when access to food and entertainment is limitless and so cheap that men kind of lose that warrior spirit and testosterone follows. So eating junk food and lounging and being sedentary and getting in touch with your feminine side, all of this leads to a decrease in T levels. Okay, so what is testosterone? Let's break this down a little bit. You probably are somewhat familiar, but it's a vital hormone for muscle mass, energy, confidence, motivation, and reproductive health. Okay, it's basically the male life force. Women have it too, in lower quantities, right? Estrogen is their main life force kind of hormone, but it's what makes you want to do shit, right? Simply stated. Okay, so what does low testosterone lead to? Well, typically it leads to depression, brain fog, low libido, meaning low sex drive, obesity, a decrease in risk appetite, so you don't feel like trying things, approaching women, starting a business, working out. You just like, I don't think it's worth it, right? And then overall you have less ambition. You're happy with the status quo. You're happy to be sitting where you are. You're happy with how things are, even if they're not so great. So that's what testosterone is. That's what it does to you. Why are T levels crashing? This is one of the big questions, right? And so one of the reasons is we have an obesity epidemic, especially in America and Western countries. We have free, entertainment, which just leads to being sedentary and sitting on your ass all day. You have cheap fast food, which actually isn't even really cheap anymore. McDonald's used to be super cheap. It's garbage food. They're not even allowed to call some of their hamburgers. They have to call them a meat product because it's just mangled chemicals and remnants of lame cows. They literally buy messed up cows and they shove it into a freezer and all these things, and it comes out as goop. So you have the obesity epidemic. So people are fatter than ever. That's a typical thing people say about Americans, fat Americans, right? And actually body fat converts testosterone to estrogen. So when you have higher body fat, 30, 40, 50% body fat, whatever little bit of testosterone you have gets converted to estrogen, which is the female hormone, which makes you more feminine. So on top of that, we have endocrine disruptors in plastics, in food, in the environment, and any plastic water bottle you drink. If you go to a gas station and they're sitting out, Dasani, Deer Park, any of these brands have the plastic water bottles that are sitting out in the hot sun, cooking the water with microplastics, and we all know that's not good for you. There's seed oils that, especially RFK now is talking about how terrible they are for you. And generally people just have a lack of understanding of what healthy food is. Now, I went on a road trip to Las Vegas with a couple of friends, and we decided we were going to, I was going to cook a meal for everybody. So we went to the gas station, and then we went to the grocery store, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna cook a meal. I'm gonna get some decent food, and what I noticed is they're throwing in Pop-Tarts and fruit gushers and Doritos, and I was like, guys, what the fuck is this? This isn't food. And they looked at me and stared like they genuinely were like, what? Really? This isn't food? It's like, yeah, this is poison. Okay, so people with obesity and all these things and just a lack of understanding of general nutrition, most of what you get out of your body is what you put into it. If you're putting in garbage, you're getting garbage out. So sedentary lifestyle, poor sleep, junk food, these things all hurt and drop your testosterone levels. Okay. On top of that, we have unlimited free porn and cheap, free, unlimited dopamine. Overexposure, right? So with short form content, with Reels, with TikTok, with all of the porn sites that you have, you could access 24/7 for free. These things numb you, blunt you, and reduce your natural drive, right? If you've ever noticed, if you've jerked off and then you're laying in bed and you don't feel like doing anything after that. You really don't. You don't want to move. You don't want to get up. It actually spikes your cortisol, and overall, it numbs you out and makes you have less ambition and drive. Okay, I'm not saying you shouldn't ever do these things, but just limit the intake and be aware of it. Okay. Also, another big thing about why testosterone levels are crashing is because social expectations are suppressing masculinity. I work in a corporate office, and I notice it's very female dominated, okay? Not just in my department, but across the board, where kind of feminine traits are put up on a pedestal, and toxic masculinity is looked down upon. Hiring across the board, you're 2 times as likely to get hired if you're a female. You have a female name rather than if you're a guy. Women are graduating and enrolling in colleges at a higher rate, 60% female, 40% male. So society is slowly but surely pushing out men and elevating women, okay? And so this causes a lower T level. So on top of that, what I just kind of alluded to was some of the effects on society. So what happens when T levels drop? Well, you get rising male infertility. Men aren't as potent, right? They can't get their wife or girlfriend or significant other pregnant if they're trying to, because they're a fat, obese piece of shit that doesn't have any testosterone and has mostly estrogen, okay? There are fewer men in the workforce. I just talked about this with higher female college graduation and enrollment rates, men dropping out of that, men discriminated against in the workplace with hiring. We know that with statistics. And so those things contribute to men just kind of taking a step back and being like, yeah, maybe I don't want to participate in this. Okay. We also see a rise in male depression and suicide rates. Okay, men are 3.9 times more likely to commit suicide than women, and some of that, a lot of that is because of depression and partially low T levels. If you don't feel good, you have negative thoughts. Okay, and so some of another effect on society is boys falling behind in school, in society, and in anything outdoors, being a participant in these things. They drop off and they're like, well, if this game is rigged against me, if I'm not advantaged or even encouraged in any way to participate, maybe I'll just drop out and do my own thing. So that's why T levels are crashing, and that's what happens when they do at a societal level. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about lab statistics then versus now, specifically around testosterone levels. So in 1980, the average T levels were 500 to 600 nanograms per deciliter. Okay, so a very wide kind of range when you go to get your testosterone tested would be 300 nanograms per deciliter is super low. 1,000 would be really high. Okay, that's kind of the broad range. And in the 80s, it was 500 to 600. In the 2000s, that dropped to around 400. That's a 25 to 30% drop over 20 years, which is very significant. And then in 2020s, many men are under 300 nanograms per deciliter. They're essentially a female at that point. When you have no testosterone, you're either morbidly obese or extremely skinny, apathetic, have no lust for life, have no drive and ambition. You don't have a sleep schedule, you don't lift weights, you eat terrible food, your T levels drop. And this has been roughly a 50% drop in 40 years, okay? And this is only increasing, so this rate is going down. And the crazy thing is some countries no longer even test for T levels because they see it so bad that they're like, oh yeah, we're just not going to bring this up. And so that is a huge red flag. So how do we fix this? What do we do about increasing or reversing this trend, right? So the biggest thing that I noticed personally, a personal anecdotal kind of piece of evidence, would be lifting heavy weights at least 3 times a week. I used to have low self-confidence. I used to have less drive, have a much lower social aptitude. I didn't want to go and talk to people. I was very introverted. And I noticed when I started lifting heavy and lifting often, everything started to get better. My mentality, my mood, my drive, my ambition, obviously my strength and how I look and all these things. So this is probably one of your best bets. So lifting heavy 3 times a week, 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep a night, okay? So a lot of people do not get enough sleep. And by the way, not everyone needs the standard 8 hours of sleep. Some people function great on 7, 6 hours. Some people need 9 hours. So you kind of need to figure that out through trial and error or consulting a doctor. But 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep. So quality sleep would be at a good temperature, roughly 65 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit. It's fairly cool, right? Not hot to where you're uncomfortable. Pitch black is also best practices, and then also no noise. So that was, I don't remember the exact French study that found those things out, but they found sleeping in a cold, quiet, completely dark bedroom, getting at least 7 to 9 hours of sleep is best. Obviously avoiding caffeine and screens in your face right before. This is huge, having proper rest, okay? On top of that, you should fix your diet, and then that would include really just paying attention to the macros. The macronutrients are carbohydrates, protein, and fat. You don't need to fucking count out calories and grains of rice. You don't need to come up with an elaborate plan. My typical meal 10 times a week is brown rice and ground beef that has good complex carbohydrates, that has a lot of protein, and the fat, the animal fat in the ground beef also has good fat. So if you actually eat real food and you eat clean the majority of the time, you're also going to do better. So between lifting heavy, my sleep was already all right, and then fixing my diet, I shot up 20 pounds. Now, I'm already a competitive grappler. I'm a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt, but so I already have the discipline in some capacity, but I wasn't lifting and I was eating like shit. And over a year, 6 months to a year, I gained 20 pounds of muscle, and I noticed all of these crazy benefits, okay? So that's how you would fix testosterone levels. Notice all of this takes a bit of effort, right? It takes work to actually get your ass in the gym and lift 3 times a week. It takes work to, at least up front, to cook and think about healthy meals and not just eat trash from McDonald's or Taco Bell or your poison of choice, right? So on top of that, getting sunlight, vitamin D does really help. So the question is to you guys, is there a big agenda for why it seems to be that testosterone levels are dropping? We already know our food is largely poisoned, almost everything in the middle of the grocery store. So talking about cereal, processed meats and dairy and all of these things have so many different chemicals and additives that are actually carcinogenic and poisonous, right? So is there a big agenda for why it seems that across the board our testosterone levels are dropping as a society? I think it is pretty deliberate to demasculinize men, and the reason is because weak men are easier to be controlled. If you're weak, if you have no drive, if you don't have any kickback, if you don't have any kind of original thoughts or goals or anything, and you don't stand up for yourself and you're not strong, then you're just going to go with the flow and read the headlines and accept them as truth and work the same shitty job and not try and improve yourself in any capacity, and you'll just do what you're told. So with T levels dropping, it causes men to become more feminine and drop out of society in a lot of cases. We see this with statistics and data. If you looked at any of my previous YouTube videos, you would see a lot of the issues we have today can be contributed to dropping testosterone. So this is most likely deliberate. Who is doing this? Who knows? I'll leave that up to you to research. But click the next video. It's appearing on your screen. I hope it helps, and I'll see you in the next one.